Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our coffee chat with mayoral candidates. I'm James McKissick with Arts Build, and I just want to welcome you on behalf of Arts Build and Arts Forward. Arts Build's mission is to build stronger community through the arts. We do that by funding the arts and arts organizations and programs. We work in arts education and help young people have arts experiences. We do leadership programs throughout the year and also work in arts advocacy. Just a reminder that our annual campaign is going on right now, and you can make a contribution to that at www.artsbuild.com anytime before the end of the year. So I'm going to turn it over to my friend and partner, Monica Kinsey, who's going to do the introductions, and she will take it from here.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us again for a coffee hour with our mayoral candidate, Michele Peterson, this week. Today we have moderator is Isaac Duncan, who is on the Arts Build board, also a sculptor himself, an artist, and also he is a part of the Mid-South Sculpture Alliance. And then we welcome Michele Peterson, who is a local businesswoman who has thrown her hat in the ring to run for mayor of Chattanooga, and we want to learn more about Michele and also for her to learn more about the arts community and how we help our local economy. Isaac, I'll let you kick it off. Thank you.
Good morning, all. I hope you're having a great morning. Have your coffee in front of you because this is going to be a great conversation. Michele, great to see you again.
Good to see you, sir.
If you wouldn't mind, can you do a quick little bio for everybody just to give them some information just in case they don't know who you are?
My name is Michele Elizabeth Peterson. I'm from Johnson City, Tennessee. Grew up there till I turned 18, came down here to play ball, played ball at UTC, walked on for a month, tore my ACL, decided not to play ball anymore and went into the culinary arts. So I worked for a restaurant in town in the Riverview area called Papa's. I met everyone I know now there, and I went to UTC and I got probably as close as anyone could get to graduating from college, and I started an elevator business when I was 24. I began to do home elevators. I went on to sell that business when I was 30, and then I started another elevator business when I was 34, and I'm still running that business now. I think that's about it. I consider myself a creative. Oh, for full disclosure, this is my first Zoom. I put lipstick and makeup on. I have officially not worn the right bra, so I apologize to everyone out there that's going to look at my shirt and all the things that women have to endure. Isaac, I mean, it's just a hard burden that we bear out here. But I had an artist come in. I paid the artist to draw a diagram, and I put my initiatives. But I've never done a Zoom before, so this is my first one. I'm glad it's with you, sir.
Great. Well, bringing up contacting and talking with artists and hiring artists to do different things. What's your personal experience with the arts here in Chattanooga?
You know, it's a funny thing. I break down the arts in many different ways. And so as a creative myself and developing projects that are much more unconventional than many people think that they should go, I did the urban lawn. And my experience has been that when you run across someone that believes themselves an artist or would like to do something that someone else hasn't done, you basically just try to serve them. You give them an understanding of how branding works, how licensing works, how the visual arts can be used to sell certain things in a consumer society. That's very important. You try to teach people about copyright and things that you've learned over the last 30 years. I've learned all those things. I'll give you an example. Somebody took a photograph one time of an elevator a long time ago. I wanted to use it for a brochure. I didn't even know what copyright meant. And the guy that I went to ask if I could use his photograph educated me. He told me what copyright means, and he licensed me the photograph. And then a guy down in Dalton printed the brochure. And the guy in Dalton that printed it was the guy that told me I needed to get the copyright. So there's just certain things that I try to do when dealing with artists and approaching art from a business perspective alongside a consumer perspective.
That's great. I mean, it's great business knowledge. Sometimes we all learn the hard way, or certain ways where we come into a oops and have to slow down certain projects and then pick right up after we get the knowledge. And you having that knowledge is great, because I know a lot of artists do get taken advantage because of that, because people believe, oh, it's out there, then they can get ahead and reproduce it and make shirts and all that. Yes, it might be in the public, but it doesn't mean that it's actually public domain to reproduce for profit. So it's great that you have that knowledge and that you were able to follow up and go through the procedure.
I told somebody just recently who asked me to use somebody's logo. I said there's something called fair use,
Mhm.
and I
Gotcha.
educated them on fair use, and as best as I could. I don't have a degree at Duke or North Carolina or UT, but I do have a degree in life, and so that I gave them that experience that I had on how to define fair use.
Great. With this experience, for your administration, how would your administration support and engage the arts sector in Chattanooga
Uh,
looking forward?
my administration would lead by example, and I have been a patron of the arts. I have been someone who believes in the artist community, coming from the artist community, because I believe culinary arts can be a big driver. I always tell people will travel for food. They'll travel hundreds of miles for food. It's the most insane thing that you've ever seen. And I believe that culinary arts, I believe the performing arts and the visual arts can go hand in hand. Quite frankly, I believe that the administration that I would put together would do everything that it could to find the funds to increase those things that make life for Chattanoogans better, not necessarily for those that visit here, but for those who live here.
That's great, because that brings the focus to local, right? And understanding that to have a great city and to really have a city that really appreciate the arts, not only do we, just by the nature of tourism, have to appease those that are out, but we really have to make sure that our local people, our communities are really tied in and also benefiting by going to all these amenities that we have. So with that,
You mind if I follow up on that, Isaac?
yes, yeah.
So one of the things that I believe I've heard over the last 30 years of living in Chattanooga and becoming a Chattanoogan, I like to say Johnson City's my soul home, Chattanooga is my home, is that one of the criticisms that I hear is a lot of people in the private sector like to fund people from out of town.
Mhm.
They like to bring people in, and not so much. That can create a level of, we want to create a level of authenticity. We want to support the local artists that live here. We want to support the people that live here. We want to give everybody the advantages of their tax-paying dollars, on the basis that we can only go so far when we get people in town on tourism or otherwise. We want to have a culture here that is about us, not necessarily about the people that visit here. And at the same time, we don't want to overpromise and underdeliver for those people that are living here, because the people are so authentic. They believe in the arts culture. And I think that's very important.
Which is a great segue to my next question. What role do you think local government should play in the arts and the culture of our city?
I think that the role of local government is ask the citizens what they'd like. It's not about us. The power never leads, the citizens lead. And we need to
Gotcha.
have a conversation with people to put their money where their mouth is. That's a very difficult thing to do when people are looking to mitigate their risk or to lose financial power to be able to make deals that typically are about them. We need to make our government look like us, Isaac.
Mhm. So what are some things that what are some ideas of how to tap into the art community, fund the art community? What innovative ideas do you have that would help fund the arts? Because if we want local artists to be put on a spotlight, we have to fund them. We know that a lot of artists, when you mentioned, we have projects, and projects a lot of times do go to out of towners. And those projects usually come with a nice price. And at times when some of the local projects are done, they're done at a smaller price. So what are some ideas of creating an equitable way of having the dollar and the prestige of being an artist in town and being local? What are some plans? What are some of your plans along those lines?
Well, obviously, we asked where I'm from, but the first thing that I would say is I'd never ask an artist to work for free. We just need to sit on that for a little while, Isaac.
It's true. I mean, you don't ask your plumber to come change your fittings for free.
I don't ask anybody to do anything for free.
Exactly.
I don't tell them that I'm going to do something for them on the basis that they're going to do something for me for free. That's the first cultural difference between me and the two to possibly three to possibly four other candidates. That's the first thing that we do. We stipulate that our city and our town, from top to bottom, will stop asking younger people, middle-aged people, and older people to do things for free. You change the culture of that, you'll change the dynamic of our city almost overnight. I mean, we could sit here in silence for the people that have done things for free and they have gone to their house and they have wondered why it didn't work out for them. We could have a moment of silence for 5 minutes for those people because they're sitting at home right now not knowing that it is on the basis of hopelessness that somebody took advantage of them because they weren't willing to pay a fair wage for their art.
That's a great point, in the sense of bringing up the whole idea of fair wage, right? Because we're, as a country, we're going through the whole debate of fair wage, what's minimum wage, creating a minimum wage that is actually livable. And for some reason, people don't see the same thing for the arts, right? They see artists as these eccentric beings that do things by the goodness of their heart. But they can just, and they'll do it for free or what's called exposure, right? So as a person in government, hopefully, right, when elected, if elected, what would be some of the plans that you would have? Are there any existing ordinances or laws that you would change to make the arts sector a little stronger, or even have a say within laws of being able to strengthen what they do?
Well, I think that the way to lead is to serve people. And I think once you serve them through the basis of time, that's what government is supposed to do. It's not supposed to be in a rush. It's supposed to be in a situation where you start asking, Isaac, where'd you come from? How'd you wind up in Chattanooga? And ultimately, as people begin to sit down with one another and they fellowship with one another on the basis that we're not going to ask you to sit down for free. And so if we have artists in this community that can be paid to sit down with us, that's the first stage of this because they have intellectual property that I don't have. I haven't been in the arts community. I've created property that people fellowship at over and over from here to Nashville to Atlanta. It's called the Urban Lawn. There are very few people until now that know that I built that to run for political office in 2012 because I'd never built anything like that before. I had a few developer buddies that told me how to do that. I made a few mistakes. And ultimately, I believe that that's what happens is that you sit down with people and ask them what mistakes, what would you do differently? You sit down with former mayors and ask them what they would have done differently for the arts and the community at large. And maybe we pay them a consulting fee for doing that. I don't know what that looks like, but what I can tell you is that I need you to understand that I don't have the roadmap, Isaac. The people that have been doing the work will give me the map, and I'll start to hopefully make the roads better.
As they say, surround yourself with people that know to get the project done, correct?
That's right. Where'd you grow up?
Brooklyn, New York.
How'd you wind up here?
Came here to work for John Henry, a sculptor, and to be his supervisor for his crew.
I just hired a sculptor for my project on Holtzclaw from Lebanon, Tennessee, that went to UTC and worked under a couple of people here. And she's going to do a sculpture called Artemis
Very good.
privately. If I was mayor, hopefully she would get funded, or some of the other artists in town. But you have to have point people. You have to have people that sometimes people don't like. There will be probably a lot of people that don't like me. I'm okay with that. Won't be the first time, Isaac.
Well,
Tell me to smile.
when you're a person of power, sometimes people don't like you, but you're not there to be liked. You're there to get the job done, right?
I'm there to hopefully serve people and not hurt them, all while they tell me I can't do something. That's been the story of my life. How about you, Isaac?
I agree. I totally agree. Let me shift the focus back onto you, if you don't mind. In our conversations in the art world, in our country, especially with the understanding and enlightenment of Black Lives Matter, Black Art Matters, what would you do to ensure equity in the major public art acquisition by our city to support Black artists and local Black artists? You have any thoughts on that?
I would say that you're the first Black artist that I've talked to in this city.
Wow.
Directly. I would own that, and I would encourage people to talk to one another as mayor, on the basis that I've been doing business in the country, all over the country, with Black and white men mostly, and I would encourage people to talk to one another. Again, government's supposed to buy the time where people can sit down and talk about the issues. And I would ask you, and that's why, quite frankly, a lot of this isn't about me. I keep telling people I'm not running a campaign, I'm running a movement. Because in this town, it's as segregated as I've ever seen. Ever. And I go into a lot of towns. You know how this started, Isaac? You know how I started to run for mayor? I started realizing every restaurant I went into, there was no one of color working there in the front of the house. And I started asking people why. Because I knew that when I got that job in Riverview, it changed my life. You want to hear the irony of how that changed my life? Because everybody thought that the people on Lookout Mountain cut me a check. The guy that I waited on that cut me a $35,000 check at the age of 24, that he believed in me, was a good old boy from Mississippi. He grew up on a dirt floor. And he said, "Hey kid, how much do you need to start a business? You can do this." That's the way it works. But for years, I'd run into people and they would tell me, "Hey, I was friends with Will Montague, really close friends with Will Montague, until he died. And he was a patron of the arts, and he actually took me to see Isak Perlman. I had never gone to see Isak Perlman if Will hadn't taken me there. So I consider that an honor and a privilege that I was able to see Isak Perlman play at the Tivoli, all because someone took an interest in me on the arts and culture. But I can promise you one thing, that everybody in town thought Will was the guy that gave me the money to start, because they came up and said, "Wasn't that great of Will?" And I didn't want to disrespect him, nor am I disrespecting him now. But at the end of the day, those people that have those types of philosophies, it's hard to say, Will wasn't the guy that gave me that money. A guy who grew up on a dirt floor gave me that money to start my business at the age of 24, because he wasn't afraid of being poor. It's as simple as that. I'd basically start talking to people and trying to direct people in a way of fellowshipping with one another, and hopefully we can go find $10 million to support the arts in this community. I believe I can do that as your mayor, Isaac. Now, people are going to call me crazy, and they're going to tell me the budget is $78 million, and they're going to tell me $270,000 was spent last year, and they're going to do everything they can to dismiss me. But as proven in most of my life, that's really hard to do, because I built the urban lawn to run for political office. And I can reach 100,000 people for $500 on the platform called Facebook. I knew that when I saw it. So hopefully we start promoting artists in our community, and we stop asking them to work for free. Then we give them the value they need to start talking to one another and figuring out those problems. Power never figures out problems. They keep telling me to smile.
You're really talking truth to power in the sense that our world runs on community.
That's
right. And community is what runs the government. Okay. Community is what paves the way. We have different sectors of community that help pick up where government can't go into or choose not to go into. But it really is that one-on-one relationship, from the man who slept on a dirt floor to the man who's taken to Tivoli, to the group of artists that are performing at the Tivoli, to the nonprofits that are created to make sure that you have a Tivoli to go to or other events. We all have to understand that we all are a part of this great macrocosm and that we all build on each other. So with that in mind, what do you see, or how do you see the arts taking the next step? Where do you see the arts in our community, and where do you see it going under your leadership?
We're going to build them a staircase, Isaac, with the money that the people give in the public domain. That's as simple as that. Pretty simple question.
What is your hope that this staircase will do? Because some people see the arts as only good to use for posters and to get visitors.
Again, I believe that when you build an arts council that's actually funded, people will figure that out. And they'll make sure that other people don't get exploited because they themselves, in their own mind, have been exploited. But I'm not going to demonize the people that actually took me to the Tivoli and invested their private dollars, because I do that every day. Every single day, I've tried to do something in the arts community to support it. Whether I go downtown and go to a restaurant, or I go to East Brainerd, or I go through the Macaulay tunnels and I eat somewhere that most people don't look like me. And then I basically sometimes have the liberty that I tell someone that's not as good as it could be. And one of the things that I'd like to do is have an arts council that can tell young people and older people that they can talk to one another without it being dismissive on both ends, because that's where we are in our society. And ultimately, like I told my dad, I had to fire my father 3 times for my business. It's the craziest thing ever. I mean, he's just the funniest man. And he calls me Jack. And I had to give him stipulations for working for me. And that's what I would do as a leader, is I would serve the people that I've asked to serve with me to try to figure out these generational problems that are upside down. And so I think if you don't mind me taking a little liberties, one of the things that I did this morning is I had a conversation with a young person that's been in my life for 6 years. And I'd maybe like, if I could take a little liberties with this conversation, I'd like to invite, if you say no, he'll understand. We're good with the word no. I always tell him the value's in the no. But if he considers himself somewhat of an artist, and he's going to MTSU. And one of the things that I think comes about when you look at such large budgets is people get overwhelmed and they don't even know where to begin, and they end up moving the dirt around. And those kind of people that move the dirt around are the people that traditionally can figure out a way to make money off of that. Where artists are original. I always say artists lead, hacks look for applause. I doubt you've ever really looked for applause over there, Isaac.
No.
Me neither. The authenticity of us is how we'll lead this city if I become mayor. And I'm asking for your vote today, Isaac, as we sit here and we talk one-on-one. And Monica and James, they can't ever. Monica might actually come out and support me one day. I'm going to put her on the spot. Come on, Monica. Tell them right now you're going to support Michele Peterson for mayor. You ready? Come on. No, I'm not gonna put her on the spot.
We got 30 more minutes to learn about you, Michelle. You gotta let Isaac do his part now. Come on.
Okay, go ahead.
You know I love you.
I know I love you too, Monica.
So within the art scene, is pretty much there's a lot of light is shine on two areas within the arts. I would say predominantly one, musical / performance, and then the visual. Do you feel that those are the only arts? Are there other part of the arts that should be also highlighted? And what are some things you can suggest on ways to get those highlighted?
Well, I think the arts culture is in general kind of has a natural synergy, right? If you're going to go to the Tivoli, you're going to go out to dinner first, or you're going to go for an after dinner drink. It's a joy and happiness that's based on experience, not on possession. I mean, that's all it is. It creates memories. And so when you sit with somebody and have dinner before, I can't tell you where we went to dinner before I saw Itzhak Perlman play at the Tivoli, but I can tell you exactly where Itzhak Perlman sat on that stage. I can tell you where Alison Krauss sat on that stage. But I know I went to dinner in a local restaurant downtown, and I know when I go to a movie theater where Hollywood or otherwise is trying to sell me something embedded within a story, and I come from the storytelling capital of the world, Johnson City, Tennessee, Jonesboro, more importantly. At the end of the day, we have visual arts, performing arts, culinary arts, and institutional and public art in this country, in this city. And those can all work together if led properly. If not creating an air of exclusivity, and if creating an air of inclusivity. Those 3 to 5 art and artists, you have probably, I would give or take 30,000 jobs under the arts of visual, performing, culinary, and institutional public. Probably more, Isaac, when you really look at it. I mean, when I go in these institutions, I see art on the wall. Maybe they'd be willing to help us. Maybe somebody who's invested in a non-denominational chapel at Erlanger would come meet with us. Maybe Erlanger would take some of those funds and put it into our city and begin to do the things that they need to do. I don't like the word sponsorship because I think that it makes people almost sycophantic in a way. Does that make sense?
Right.
I think sponsorship, when you talk about sponsorship, especially after 9/11, there's all kinds of implications to that you have to know who the powers that be. And if I'm a kid in East Chattanooga and I want to have access to an artist community and I want to be able to learn something from someone else, I think government should bridge that divide. I really believe that.
I totally agree, and that's I'm glad you brought that up because that's also one of the conversations and one of the questions that I have. I believe that, like a lot of artists, that government has surplus. They have places that are not being used or utilized in a way to be efficient. And unfortunately, one of the things that I found here is we have ample amount of rec centers, but not a lot of programming that can really benefit the youth and the communities. So with your example of East Lake and your example of people not, let's say a young person or anybody, doesn't have to be young, wants to be exposed to the art, maybe they don't have a car to go downtown. Maybe they don't have the couple of cents or dollars, to jump on an Uber or whatever. But if you build something there in the community, then you're really bringing the arts to them. So what is your thought on the rec centers, and how do you see, or how do you think those can be better utilized?
I think it's time for a change in our youth and family development division. That's all I'll say for that. The 4 rec centers that I've been into under the youth and development leadership are failing our young people. Oh,
Sorry, guys.
That might have been the person that's leading youth and family. Holy smokes! Hold on. Push that button. I'm sorry, LaRon. I'm sorry, Coach Jennings. I'm sorry. I'm picking with a giant right there, Isaac. That's what I do, though. I'm not shy to say that our youth and family development division of leadership, quite frankly, has left some of these kids behind in the arts community. Being so sports centric, male centric, and otherwise, it can lead to certain things that cause people to really question why they should walk in the door to begin with. I happen to be a kid that could have played ball in anything, I say. I hate to tout my own wisdom here, but at the end of the day, it is what it is. When I first went on to a sports team, I was a 9-year-old. I was the third woman to play Little League Baseball in Tennessee after the Supreme Court weighed in on the woman in Nashville. And at the end of the day, they called me Michael for the first 3 years when I got up on opening day, and I didn't have enough courage until the 4th year to stand there until they called me Michele, because my mother gave me one L. And at the end, those perceptions of what a rec center can do need to be led in more of a conversation of what basically means to, sorry about that, what basically means to fund other things besides what looks like you. That's the hardest part of leadership. If you want to know, quite frankly, that is the hardest part about being a creative, is you have to put another personality and another hat on, and you have to pretend as though those needs don't have anything to do with you. All while doing a job that you're getting paid for that has been led generationally based on certain things. And that's why I'm appreciative that you're in our community. And I'm appreciative that you're showing young African Americans and young black and brown men and women, quite frankly. Aubrey will do the same when she does Artemis. And maybe people who come up and look at her work will be critical of it, but at the end of the day, I don't care. Because it's in the doing that you learn. And we need to bring the arts to the youth and family that development.
That is so true. It is in the doing where you learn. It's through the path, that journey that you grow. It's usually never the end,
Never the end. And people forget that we go to school to learn how to learn expediently. We don't go to school to actually do anything. We go to school to teach our brains not to make the same mistakes that our people before us made, and to learn expediently. That's why I sold my first elevator company when I was 30, because I had made all the mistakes leading up to that. And our youth and family development centers are, for what lack of a better word, they're not culturing an inbound marketing concept where these kids can see many different aspects of our society, including white people. Be very clear that when I walk in Brainerd Rec Center, there are very few white people. And when I walk into restaurants downtown, there are very few black people. This is the biggest obstacle we will have, where we have placed those types of mechanisms on people who don't look like us and said, you go do it. And we haven't had the courage to sit with each other and say, how can we do it better? That's it. It's a movement, not a campaign, Isaac. And it's going to involve heavily the arts, because the arts typically involve original and fearless people. Never forget that. Aaron Sorkin wrote that line, by the way. I took that. We'll give all Aaron, I know he got plenty of $1 million, but he wrote that line in the Steve Jobs movie. Artists lead, hacks look for applause. That's it. Pretty simple.
Funding. The biggest argument that happens, I would say, is money between people, between couples, between friends, and definitely within government. We have to be creative. We have to come up with different solutions and ways to make things happen. But it usually comes down to support in a monetary way. What are some ideas that you might be able to throw out to our arts community of ideas that you've probably thought of or heard of that and that you agree with, of ways that we can create a funding source that is constant and sustainable? Because we know one-offs are good, but one-offs don't get the job done, right? We know that many say that they support, but it's just at that moment. We need to build something in our community for the arts sector that is sustainable and support, especially if we're expecting artists to continue to bring new ideas, help become amenities create great amenities in our city so we can enjoy as citizens and others can visit. So what are some ideas that you've thought of or you've heard that deals with the funding aspect and creating a sustainable funding stream for the arts sector?
Well, the first thing is just talk about the facts. That's the way I deal with most businesses that I run, is I look at the facts. And the fact is, Isaac, over 25% well, first let's start with our city budget. 80% of our city budget is comprised of property taxes. Makes sense, right? 25% of the properties in our city don't pay tax. We could sit silently on that for 5 minutes as well. 25% of our properties in our city do not pay any tax at all, while the burden is put on the private sector to move them forward. This is not a local narrative, Isaac, it is a national narrative. People are not paying their fair share. And then they're pointing at the rest of us and telling us to quit complaining. I'm supposed to smile. We can sit in a moment of silence for that. I paid $150,000 in property taxes last year because I put my money where my mouth is. Albeit I paid half of them late. But I paid the fee. It's a movement, Isaac. It's not a campaign. You have to believe. I'm a non-traditional candidate. I did not come, nor was I made in this town. But I know what it looks like.
So is your idea to go after those who aren't paying their fair share and then creating a equity stream or a funding stream from that?
I don't like the word after. That tends to make people defensive. I would just ask them. And maybe we create a pool of funds together, and maybe all those foundations that are trying to do good, and I believe they are. I'm not going to demonize them for that work. It's just time to have a public narrative together where somebody says, it'd be like me saying, I'm going to call them out individually. I'm not ever going to do that. I'm a good Johnson City girl who came here to basically learn something I didn't know or somebody couldn't teach me there, and to play ball. And I've done pretty well at the playing ball aspect. I've negotiated with the powers that be from here to California. I've done a pretty decent job of getting people to understand if you want something to look better, you have to be willing to pay for it or invest in it. And at the end of the day, that's where I would start asking those people that aren't paying anything locally and only improving their property. Keep in mind, we can drive around and see the haves and the have-nots just based on the condition of the road leading there. So for me, that's the most important thing that I can say to you is I have never, ever, ever defaulted the woman that told me not to end a sentence in a preposition and between the A and the T. Do you have one of those? When you said, where are you at? Between the A and the T. And I just never really fundamentally understood that. It's a hard thing on the basis that that part of it comes on the truest nature of the biggest portion of our budget is spent with the police. $78 million. We can sit on that for a little while too, Isaac. And I'm not demonizing the men in blue or the women in blue, because there are probably some artists that are embedded in there as well. Maybe more than we actually realize. Festivals and otherwise bring people out. Neighborhood festivals get people to where they've never been before. I will throw somebody under the bus right now. You ready? You ready, Isaac? I hope he watches this, man, because I like this old boy. But he has forgotten where he came from. And I invited Bob Corker over to East Chattanooga one day, and he surprised me and shut up, and he looked at me and said, "Where are we?" And I said, "We're in Chattanooga, Bob." He needs to come over to Chattanooga more often. Does that make sense? He owns a lot of property and pays a lot of taxes. He needs to go meet with those people who aren't paying any taxes right now and encourage them to increase their funding to the community foundation and to all the other people, because they're afraid, Isaac. You don't ever get anything done based on fear. I make every decision based on opportunity. And I'd like your vote. I'd like Monica's vote. I won't put James on this. That old Cleveland guy. I ain't gonna put him on this. I ain't gonna put him on the thing. Votes lead to hope, and hope leads to outcomes if you're willing to say the truth about our city. I have always been willing to say the truth of what I see. It's my lens, though, Isaac. I just need you to look through it.
And I think you're presenting a great lens to our arts community today. Those who do not know you now know you, and hopefully, or a little bit of you, because we never get the full picture. It's only time that tells who a person is. So, but the information that you've given us today, I believe, gives a beautiful picture for everyone to know where you stand and how you stand. So with that, I'm going to hopefully see, well, I'm going to ask you a question, one more question, and then after that, I believe is going to be time for questions and answers. So my last question of the day is potholes or artwork?
Both. There's money in the. There's money in it.
Very good. Very
you
good.
could find the money, and you could raise the money when you raise people's awareness and you tell them you won't waste their money at the same time. I've done it in business my entire life. That guy that made $35,000, he made a good bit of return on me too, and I was okay with that. We have to give credence where credence is due. We have to tell people we appreciate them, all while asking them it's not about you anymore. That's our city. That's the culture of our city for the next 20 years. This mayor's race is the most important vote Chattanooga citizens will make in the next 20 years based on the current economic condition of our country. And I'm going to ask every person I run into from here till March to vote for me, because I've been able to do it from scratch, Isaac. That's it.
Well, Michele, thank you very much. This is again a great cafe talk interview with you. You did not do bad for your first one, so
My first day, buddy.
cheers on that.
And I didn't even have but 1 cup of coffee.
And I will hand it over to Executive Director of Arts Build. Nope, actually, I'm going to hand it over to yes, I am going to hand it over to the Executive Director of Arts Build, James McKissick.
Want to quickly say thank you, Isaac, for your moderation, and thank you, Michele, for your candidness and for being with us today. So we have some questions in the Q&A, and there's also one in the chat, and Monica has agreed to facilitate this part of the discussion.
Okay, here we go. So first question from the Q&A, Michele, is Mayor Burke restructured city departments when he assumed the position. Would you keep the structure, change it, or something else?
I would have a meeting with Mayor Burke for him to enlighten me on why he wanted to change the structures. Then I'd answer that question. There had to have been a reason that he saw fit to restructure something that had been in place for years before him. So I would ask him why. Hopefully that would lead to the answer that would have me restructuring. But the first position that I would fill or refill would be youth and family development. And I'd have that done over a period of time where you could introduce some new in with somebody who's been brought in, and we would bridge those two people. It doesn't mean that it's funny how people say what they say and then they'll lead to what they lead to on the basis of we would bring a collaborative effort to that department. We would have two leaders running hand in hand. So Coach Jennings would have someone in the arts community running beside him so that youth and family development would start to have a different narrative alongside having the narrative that it's been singularly focused on for the last 20 years, 20 to 25 years. Does that make sense, Monica? I'd probably keep youth and family development leadership in place for the first 4 years, but I would have a bridge. And then hopefully through the funding that I just talked about and the increased funding, you could split those two possibly. So it would be a great thing to know why Burke did what he did.
I like your positive outlook that you're already looking forward to multiple terms there. I noticed the first 4 years. Okay, next question is, what is your vision for Chattanooga, and can you share some specifics about your policies and how they will support your vision?
It won't be my vision, it'll be our vision. I tend to have a lot of questions before I give the answers. I was raised by a middle child, Monica. I'm trying to smile more. I don't mean to be sarcastic, but I've got this thing on my board that smile more. You know, at the end of the day, I don't have all the answers. There's no silver bullet here. This is 50, 70 years in the making. Mm-hmm. I'm studying right now on why we have sales and use tax locally. I would love for someone to tell me how and who voted on it back in 1972 when they paired revenue growth on the government activities side of our government, our local government, where and who proposed that we pair up with the state and start collecting sales and use tax locally. That funded a lot of stuff when they made that decision.
Mm. Okay. How would you address the gaps of inclusion and diversity in our city's cultural landscape?
Say it again.
How would you address the gaps of inclusion and diversity in our city's cultural landscape?
Well, I would define the cultural landscape in what aspect, because I brought up a lot of things that I've noticed and the divides that happen in our culture from our arts perspective. So bringing it back to culinary arts, I would go and try to bridge the divide between what people have done at Chat State when it talks about bringing kids in and having them be able to go to school for free and otherwise to feed a culinary arts community that I think we could give Atlanta, Nashville, and Birmingham a run for their money.
I have to agree with you on that. I think we have tremendous talent in our culinary arts as well in this town. Another question is, the Edney building is now home to CoLab, which provides an entrepreneur program called Co-Starters. As mayor, what would you do to ensure that the arts entrepreneurship is encouraged and included in the innovative district paradigm?
I would ask the CoLab's leadership what they're spending on art, see where they put their money.
Okay. What is the main reason that you want to be our next mayor, and why should we vote for you?
Well, first of all, I'm asking you, Peterson for mayor behind that board that you have there, Monica. Every time you do an interview, I'd like to have that, and I'm willing to pay for it. Peterson for mayor, right behind you. I believe that the people that are leading right now in our city have done it from a place of fear. And I believe that the people that are running against me or for me or with me, as they change their hearts, will believe that we've got opportunity in the city that's not been discussed, nor have we asked the right questions, because these people look more of the same to me.
Okay. I believe that's all the questions we have submitted. Do you have any last words that you'd like to leave the art community with? We have about 31 people on this call that are paying attention.
31 people. I always say design is better done in odd numbers, so that's a good sign. I'm Appalachian by soul. No, I think that ultimately, if people would like to reach out to me, we're going to get our website going. We're going to turn in our paperwork. People have been critical of, are you going to take this seriously or aren't you going to take this seriously? And I take artists very seriously because I think ultimately without artists, we live in a very banal society. And I believe in creativity. I do. I believe it drives everything.
Okay. Well, thank you. We really appreciate you taking the time to bring your smiling face here and to share with us about your plans as mayor, future mayor. Thank you to Isaac for moderating and for being here and participating. And thank you to everyone who's attended. This means the world to us. And we really, the arts and culture drive, you know, it's $172 million economic driver in the city. And we really appreciate your support.
Hey, hold on, $172 million in this community while our city's spending less than $270,000. That's a pretty deep investment return. If we spent $10 million, what the community would look like as a whole.
All right. And we'd also like to remind everyone that we are doing another one of these on Friday, a lunch and learn with Kim White. So we'd like you to join in. You too, Michelle, feel free to log in, and I'll turn it over to James.
All right. Thank you all so much. And thanks for the support that we've been getting in the art sector and the broader community for these mayoral chats. We do appreciate everyone who attended, and we hope to see you on Friday when we talk to Kim White. Have a great day.
Bye, y'all.